Fasten your seatbelt. I'm taking you for the ride of your life. I'm going to show you what this car can really do. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Hang on.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hold on to your butts.
Go get him, kid.
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor. Not a tumor at all.
As if you're going to ask me. So you can go ahead and ask me what you're going to ask me. And my natural response could be to get offended.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right.
You're listening to the 30-something movie podcast. One movie each week, 30 years in the making.
Something movie. I don't know why I was going to start to turn that into a musical. Maybe it was the Stephen Sondheim from this movie just like really got to me, and I was like, this is going to be a musical episode. I don't know why this is going to be a musical episode. Maybe because this movie is a very interesting mix of crime superhero musical.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If you're into singing everything, and I know Nora is watching The Flash. Let me know when you get to that episode of The Flash.
We got to that episode of The Flash. She really enjoyed that one. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well done, Flash showrunner people.
Yeah. That was good stuff. In fact, I remember the first time around when we watched that, I think Sharon and I were watching it. We're like, what is this?
Yeah.
This is just, and I don't think we were in a good frame of mind to be watching a musical episode for that one. But watching it this time around with the kids are like, this is weird. This is goofy. I was like, do you not remember all the times that we would watch the, when they were little, there was a great Batman cartoon, and I don't care if you're a child or an adult, you've got to go back and watch this Batman cartoon. It was called Batman Brave and the Bold. Mm-hmm. And in DC Comics, they had a comic called The Brave and the Bold, and it was always a team up comic. So, and sometimes they would be the most unlikely team ups. It would be like Superman teams up with Robin, or Batman teams up with Aquaman, or, stuff like that. And so they did a cartoon. This would have been, the kids are little, so it probably would have been around, like 2010, 2012, sometime around there. I used to watch it with John when he was little, and this cartoon is hilarious. It is, the Batman, kind of the animation of it, the Batman looks like the 60s Batman, with his costume. It's the gray with the kind of blue mask and the blue cape, but just the other characters are hilarious in this.
Awesome.
And they have like a Cannonball Run episode where all the different characters have their own cars, and they're doing like this cross-country death race.
That's awesome.
But it's just hilarious. And they have a few episodes where the Music Meister shows up as the villain, and it ends up being a musical episode of the cartoon. Cool. But it has so many little in-jokes. If you're a fan of like 60s TV Batman, or any of the other stuff that's come out, they knew that parents were going to be watching this too, so they dropped in a whole bunch of little Easter eggs for the parents watching it. So if you get a chance, or if your kids like superhero stuff at all, you got to go find and check out the Batman Brave and the Bold cartoon.
Nice.
And Aquaman is hilarious. He's ridiculous in that entire cartoon. Anytime he shows up, he's just like this big. I don't know if you ever watched one of the cartoons that was out in probably would have been the 90s, Johnny Bravo. Did you ever watch Johnny Bravo? Yeah. Aquaman reminds me of Johnny Bravo.
That's awesome.
A little less Elvis Presley, but, very, very, very similar in some ways.
Johnny Bravo.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's good stuff. All right. Well, we're not here to talk about Johnny Bravo. We're here to talk about Dick Tracy.
Yes.
So this is our Dick Tracy episode. Very, very quickly, we spoil the movies. So we're going to spoil all over the place here. So just be warned. That's what we do. iTunes or wherever reviews, please leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. If it's on iTunes, that's great. But wherever you get your podcast, leave us a review or get in touch with us. Let us know what you're enjoying about the show, because whatever you're enjoying, we'll keep doing it. If there's stuff you're not enjoying and we hear from enough people, then we'll think about it.
We'll keep doing it.
We'll keep doing it. We're going to do whatever we want to do. Are you paying for the show? Well, then we're going to keep doing it. I don't know why John just got sassy all of a sudden. Like that.
Man, get one more cocktail in him. Look what happens.
Man, but I usually I get friendly. Like when there's more scotch involved, I get friendly. I don't know why I got sassy there. Maybe it was the movie. I don't know.
Could have been.
Maybe it's just so many criminals in one place and they're weird faces. Yeah, it's creepy. 30podcast.com. That's got all the different places where you can find out more about our show, all the different social media places, voicemail line, all that fun stuff. By now, it should also have the voting form up there as well. So if you want to vote on your favorite movies of 1991, as we start to kind of plan that out heading into next year, that is going to be up there as well. So as you can already hear, the angelic choir of co-hosts that I have with me here tonight. First of all, thank you, brother Pat. To my left, to my right, actually, depending on where you are on the screen, I don't know. But let's go to my left is Pat Canigallo. Brother Pat, how are you doing?
Hey, doing well, John. How are you doing?
Good. I feel like I just turned us into a monastery when I just started calling you brother Pat. I don't know how I feel about that now.
Our content matter, we're rather typical of a monastery.
It doesn't. The vow of silence is what most people wish we take. Is that what you're saying?
I get that a lot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. If it's Friar Tuck and there's beer, then hey,
that works.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Speaking of Friar Bo, I don't know why I'm going with this theme. It has nothing to do with Dick Tracy, so it's.
Hey, you started it. You can do whatever you want.
I thought of us. I thought of us, and I thought of the word fry, and Friar came out, and
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
it's all good, man. It's all good.
So, you gentlemen doing all right?
Yes, sir. Quite well.
Yeah. Fun movies this month.
Staying alive. Staying alive.
Oh yeah.
Staying alive. There you go. Thank you for dancing, Bo. No one can see you, but thank you for dancing, Bo.
Right.
No problem.
That's how I dance best, is when no one can see me. All right. Yeah. Well, yes, this time around we are talking the 1990 movie Dick Tracy. I don't think we got a whole lot of movie news, so let's just jump right on in it. This movie came out on the 15th of June, 1990, rated PG with a runtime of 1 hour and 45 minutes. Directed and produced by Warren Beatty. He directed Heaven Can Wait and Reds. He also produced Bonnie and Clyde and Bugsy. Writers for this one, Chester Gould did the characters from the comic strip. He died in 1985, so he never got a chance to see this movie. Gould did, there were some Dick Tracy movies back in the 30s and 40s. Have you guys ever seen any of those? Any of the old Dick Tracy movies?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. I knew they existed, but I've never seen any of them. And then also written, this one was also written by Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr. Jim Cash died in 2000. Between the two of them, they also wrote Top Gun and Turner and Hooch. Cinematography was done by Vittorio Storaro. He also did cinematography for Apocalypse Now and The Last Emperor. Music was done by Danny Elfman, who did Batman and Beetlejuice. Budget for this one was $46 million. Box office was $162.7 million, so it did pretty well. Flickmetrics gives this one a 59%, and CinemaScore gives it a B+. Warren Beatty played Dick Tracy. He was in Bonnie and Clyde, Heaven Can Wait, and Reds. Charlie Korsmo played Kid. He was in Hook and What About Bob? Jim Wilkie played Stooge. He was in Mad Max Fury Road and The Dark Knight. Stig Eldred played Shoulders. He was in the 2005 version of King Kong and a movie called The Stolen. Neil Summers played the Rodent. He was in RoboCop and Midnight Run. Chuck Hicks played the Brow. He was in Legion and Star Trek II Wrath of Khan. Lawrence Stephen Myers played Littleface. He was in Unfaithful and An American Haunting. William Forsythe, let's get that one right, played Flat Top. He was in Raising Arizona and The Devil's Rejects. Edo Ross played Itchy. He was in Red Heat and Lethal Weapon. Glenn Headley, who died in 2017, she played Tess Trueheart. She was in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and Mr. Holland's Opus. Madonna played Breathless Mahoney. She was in Evita and Die Another Day. Mandy Patinkin played 88 Keys. He was in The Princess Bride and Alien Nation. Paul Sorvino played Lips Manless. He was in Goodfellas and The Rocketeer. Al Pacino played Big Boy Caprice. He was in Serpico and Dog Day Afternoon. Dustin Hoffman played Mumbles. He was in Tootsie and Rain Man. And Dick Van Dyke played D.A. Fletcher. He was in Mary Poppins and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Real quick before I read off the synopsis from the Googles, I could have gone on forever, like going through the cast, the characters and the cast. And there's just so many people in this movie. And I was like, at some point, I got to cut off this list because otherwise that's going to be the whole episode. Yeah. It's just me listing off all the characters and the actors who played them. So there were a whole bunch that I, completely did not include in here just for time's sake. But yeah. Tons and tons of people in this movie. Hard-boiled detective Dick Tracy, played by Warren Beatty, is searching for evidence that proves that Alphonse Big Boy Caprice is the city's most dangerous crime boss. He may have found the key to unraveling the crime lord's illegal empire in Breathless Mahoney, played by Madonna, an enigmatic barroom singer, or ballroom singer, either way, who has witnessed some of Caprice's crimes firsthand. However, she seems more set on stealing Dick away from his girlfriend Tess, played by Glenn Headley, than helping him actually solve the case of his career.
Tracy! It's like he's reading my mind.
Extra! Tracy Battles move!
I'm taking this bum out of the headlines. I'm rubbing him out.
Hey, Tracy, watch out!
You take Tracy to me. I say we kill Tracy now.
You challenge me, we all go down!
Are you gonna arrest me?
I want to know who killed Lips Manless.
Not the bad, Big Boy, not the bad!
I know, and I'm gonna miss you. But all's fair in love and business. Whose side are you on?
The side I'm always on. Mine.
What? What's the word out? Lips territory is my territory now. Everything he owns, I own. Move in and take your positions. Okay, boys, let's go. And you, guilty of attempting to bribe an officer of the law.
She does some nifty undercover work. That Dick Tracy drives you crazy, doesn't he?
All right, that's enough. I want Tracy dead!
Tracy, let's go! Good luck.
You have just said goodbye to oxygen.
Aren't you gonna frisk me?
Stupid cop.
Tracy?
Warren Beatty is Dick Tracy.
All right, so as we usually start this off, single word or phrase, how does this movie make you feel?
I think I said this last week, but kind of good, fun, like all that. I'm kind of just repeating myself, but I'll keep it simple. The movie's fun. It's makes me feel good watching it. It's a fun adaptation, It's cool how they brought the comic book thing into the movies, especially with set direction and art and just the overall look of it.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't know. It was fun. Fun movie.
All right. Bo, what have you got?
It's hard to put a feeling on it, but it's like Pat said, I always think about the color palette of this movie. It's so vibrant, colorful, and bright, and just out there. It just sort of grabs you, and it tells you you're in a different place all together right from the start, and it keeps you in the movie. It keeps you entertained. So entertained, I suppose.
I'm going to give 2 words here, separated by a comma. I'm going to say pretty, boring.
But there is a comma in there, or
not
no
pretty,
comma?
not pretty, boring. Pretty, comma, boring.
Okay.
So that's going to be that until we dig further into that's going to be my initial response.
Okay.
So I'm going to assume this is not the first time we've seen this movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
First time for me.
Oh, it's the first time you've seen it?
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow,
I maybe saw parts, but this was the first time I saw it.
Okay.
Cool.
So as a first time viewer, what were kind of your initial thoughts watching this movie? Because the interesting thing about this is I think for Bo and myself, I won't speak for Bo, but saw this in the theater, this was really big at the time. I mean, there were commercials everywhere. There were toys everywhere. There was the McDonald's game. There was all kinds of tie-ins for this. And I remember, like, we talk about this movie at school. The movie hadn't even come out yet. And I remember everybody talking about the movie before it even came out, and how big of a deal this was going to be. And the toys were, everybody wanted to get the toys, and so, but that's how it was when it came out. You're watching this for the first time after the fact. And at the time, too, you really didn't have too many comic book or comic strip type movies. You had Batman, and that was pretty much it. So I'm kind of curious to hear how watching this for the first time in 2020 was.
Yeah. So, I mean, for the first time watching it in 2020, it was, I think the movie is so unique, and it's such a part of, like, kind of movie culture. I mean, could you say it's a niche film? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, how many people know that Warren Beatty did a Dick Tracy movie? Like, if you ask people of our generation, they might go, Warren Beatty? Oh yeah, that one. So
most people of our generation would probably be like, Warren who?
Yeah. I enjoyed it. It was good. I like how they adapted the comic books for it, especially when you look at other stuff in its time. I mean, where else, you had Wonder Woman and Superman from the 70s, and they did it, for the show and the movie, they did it one way. Then in the 80s, I think the only comic book thing you really have, other than Howard the Duck, but the only comic book movie that you've had is Batman, and that went such a different direction. And I mean, my excitement for 89 Batman is well documented. If you have any questions about that, please see our first 250 podcasts. So, I mean, that was such a complete departure from what comic books characters, what they're realized as previously, that I don't know. I thought this was cool. It was like they, it was almost like, where, like in the movie Wreck-It Ralph, when you see the 8-bit video game screen and then they jump into that world and suddenly everything is vibrant and alive. And I think that's kind of what they did with this. Like, you can imagine it almost as a 2-dimensional comic book strip, but that you jump inside of it. You know what I'm saying? And, like, even a lot of the characters are kind of 2-dimensional cardboard cutout characters, but you're so wrapped up with the, they're bringing comic book level characters to life that, like, you're still entertained. Just, even though they're 2-dimensional. Okay, there's the rough kid from the streets. Okay, Dick. But then Dick Tracy, they kind of elevate him. They give him, like, kind of a little character arc, not a big one, but he kind of works through some stuff. They he and his girlfriend, the relationship really isn't working out. Okay, there's a little bit of a pseudo love triangle. They just introduce enough to kind of make it interesting for the big screen, but it still feels very much like you're, watching reading a comic book strip. Bo, you mentioned the color palette, the way they do the set, the way they do all of that stuff. That was kind of my reaction. Al Pacino is great yelling at people, as always. I thought Dick Tracy was fantastic. Warren Beatty, and I think it's kind of cool that this was his pet project. Like, this is the story he wanted to have made, so he put everything on the line to do that. And, well, I don't know how much he put it on the line, but I mean, he directed it and acted in it and the whole thing. Madonna in the movie, I mean, like, she inhabited that role of Breathless Mahoney. So enough said, because it's a family friendly podcast, but yeah, I don't know if her costumes were PG rated, but not my call.
What are some of the things? I mean, did it hold up for you over the years watching it?
So.
Okay.
But I, as I think we've talked about before, sometimes movies that we enjoyed as kids get a pass, and you don't necessarily pick up on the faults in it. But I had a great time watching it again. It had been years since I'd seen it, but I still enjoyed it. I still love when all the big name actors show up. I'm like, God, how did they pull this off? I mean, Mandy Patinkin is 88 keys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's crazy. You think about that today, like assembling a cast like this. And then I'm a sucker for a movie that makes its choices artistically and sticks with it and goes with it. So I love this kind of color palette. This very saturated, heavy palette really appeals to me, always has. So that just keeps me entertained. And then it's a gangster cop movie, which I like too. So it just sort of keeps me. It ticks all the boxes for me,
Yeah.
Including that I loved it as a kid, which certainly helps.
The interesting thing about this movie for me is that as a kid, like I bought into all the hype, like when everything was, I mean, the commercials were on TV, the game, McDonald's had the scratch off cards they were doing as part of the promotional tie-in. They had the toys come out, all kinds of stuff. I mean, there was just Dick Tracy stuff was everywhere. And I had never read the comic strip as a kid. So I don't even think I knew what the comic strip was. I think I just knew that there was this movie coming out called Dick Tracy. It was really colorful. So as a kid, like it looked really cool. They stuck with like the 7 basic colors that like a newspaper comic strip would use. And I love how they did that. I vividly remember as a kid, this is one of the first times that I got so hyped up for a movie. And then even as a kid, when I went to go see it as a 10-year-old, I remember going and seeing this movie and being entertained when I was watching the movie, and then leaving the theater, I was like, okay. Like it was immediately, for me, it was immediately forgettable as soon as I left the theater. Did it have for me, does it tick some of those, as you said, Bo, does it tick some of those same boxes? Absolutely. I mean, you've got, John was even commenting when we were finishing the movie earlier, he said, so everybody's got Tommy guns and they don't ever have to reload. Is that how that works? And I was like,
yes.
I mean, yes, that's basically how that works. When you're a movie based off of a comic strip, yes, you don't ever have to reload anything. It's just, that's how it is.
They must have gotten the same model as that guy in Miller's Crossing.
In Miller's Crossing, right. He's an artist with a Thompson. But yeah, I mean, that's in some of those scenes, like those are some of my favorite scenes where they're just guns blazing, stuff exploding in the background. The visuals are beautiful in this movie. And that's why my initial response to this is pretty, boring. And not that I'm necessarily bored. Boring might have been the wrong word. I'm not bored when I watch the movie. I love how this movie looks. Like, I love everything they've put into the design of the characters, the design of the costumes, the colors, the set design, all those pieces. And it ticks some of those boxes for me too. Like some of my favorite movies, like I've mentioned many times, The Rocketeer. There's a lot of movies and a lot of stuff that I like that kind of falls into that 1930s, 1940s style. I feel like some of the stuff we've talked before about Dark City, like there's some of the stuff about the movie Dark City that really fits into that style. Sky Captain, is another movie that I really enjoy that has some of that fits into that type of style of it. The Indiana Jones movies, that kind of stuff, the Captain America. So that time period is one that I'm always really interested in when it comes to movies. And so it does tick some of those boxes for me with, stylistically how things are done. And a very stylized movie, much like, you already mentioned, that there are some other movies kind of similar to this. You've got, something like a 300 or Sky Captain. I just mentioned that one. Sky Captain's another one, very stylized movie with the visuals. I think of like Sin City, something like that. And what it does well in that department, I just feel like, I think after having watched this movie again this time, I think it's the writing. I think it's the story. And I think that some of it is the acting as well. This movie has, it has all the elements that it should have. It's got the big names. It's got the beautiful visuals. It's got action. It's got humor. But I didn't feel any like heart and soul in the movie. Like I didn't get, I didn't get the chemistry between the characters. I felt like if you were pulling it off of, I mean, this looks like it came right off the comic strip page, and in a very positive way. But then I also feel like the personality of this movie was also just as flat and two-dimensional as a comic page. So that's where it kind of falls apart for me, and that's where, even watching it this time, I'm watching through the movie and I'm like, okay, I don't really care about any of these characters. Actually, there was a point in time in which I was like, you know what? I actually feel like I kind of like Big Boy a little bit more than I do Dick Tracy. Like, he's a more likable character in this movie. Dick Tracy's kind of boring. So it was not. And even watching it, Nora couldn't finish watching it because she was, I think I mentioned this before, she was weirded out by the people's faces, and rightfully so. Like, they did a great job with the makeup, but it's also kind of creepy in some spots. So she didn't want to finish it, and I told her that's absolutely fine. John finished it, and he and I had finished it, and usually after we've watched some of the different movies that we've watched, he'll be like, "Hey, that was really good." He's like, "Thanks for letting me watch that movie with you." This time the movie was done, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, I'm just gonna go to my room now."
Good night, Dad.
Like, okay,
yeah,
all right. I usually we talk about the movie. Like he's like, "Yeah, thanks, that was really good," and this time, nothing. And I kind of felt the same way. I was like, okay, well, I felt like this time watching the movie was a chore that I had to accomplish because I had to do it for the podcast. It doesn't detract from the visuals. It doesn't detract from the soundtrack is great. Like, I love the songs that are in it too. But it's just, I don't know, the acting almost, sometimes when you've got those other pieces and they get done so well, you can be like, all right, I can excuse some bad acting. Sometimes I think of like the Star Wars movies. Star Wars movies are never going to win any Oscars for acting. But this movie in particular, I'm like, the acting in this one and just the lack of chemistry between anybody in this one, I feel like this actually drags down the movie in a way that it really shouldn't.
Well, it's almost, you bring up Star Wars, it's almost like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's the knock that's on episodes 1, 2, and 3. Fantastic world building, a guy that made the movie that had a story that he wanted to tell, stunning visuals, bringing this world to life, colors, all this kind of thing. But then, was there chemistry between the leads? And, did we have some of these things that if you stripped all that away, would you have a good story? At the core, is there a good story? And it seems like folks that if they are going to take a look at Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3, those are the things that they can say, yeah, maybe that part was put secondary to this fantabulous world that they built and is expanded and the backstory and all that. So now we've taken Dick Tracy and it was a 2-dimensional comic book strip and we've built this world and there's colors and there's this and everything is all opened up. Well, but again, just that core important part of making a movie, a great plot, chemistry with the character, that was kind of put maybe not as strong as the actual world building.
Yeah.
That happened.
Watching it this time, I really got a sense of, because I also in the back of my mind, I was like, for the podcast, I got to talk about how big the marketing was for this movie and like the tie-ins and all the other stuff, because that I remember as a kid, that being one of the first times I really paid attention to the fact that, hey, McDonald's is doing this and Burger King's doing this. And like all these different places had all these tie-ins. And I vividly remember the scratch-off card game that McDonald's had. And I'm watching the movie this time, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you know what? This movie feels less like a movie and more like a collection of scenes that we could cut up and put in a trailer or put in promotional material. Like you've got the great scenes with like the guns blazing, explosions in the background. You've got the everybody in the press in their multicolored suits, walking down the steps of the courthouse, but it felt really disjointed to me, and it really felt like this movie was a collection of promotional scenes and promotional shots, with a very thin story kind of holding it together.
In fact, that was the one you talk about the explosions. And I don't know if you mean when Dick Tracy's walking down the street with the Tommy gun. I remember that from the trailer.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just saw a clip like that really stood out in my mind. And that was kind of almost the shock value of, whoa, I thought Dick Tracy was like a comic book, but yeah, I don't know. It's funny you mentioned that one scene in particular, because that was something that just stood out in my mind from when I was a kid.
I think that the music too, not the Stephen Sondheim music, but the Danny Elfman music really took me out of the movie, because this was one of those times where, and I fully
too much like Batman.
Yeah.
And
it was almost for the same, right. And Darkman. It was almost for the same reason that the music took me out of Darkman was for this one as well. I was like, but this just sounds, and I know we've commented sometimes on like, some of the other composers, and we're like, they're really similar. Like that music sounds almost exactly like this music in this movie, but just the last, and maybe because we've watched them pretty close to each other between Batman and Darkman and Dick Tracy, I'm like, it's too close. Like it's too close in time for these movies to have come out. Maybe if there were some years apart between these movies, that would be fine, but it really threw me off. And if I closed my eyes, I'd be like, I'm watching Batman, or I'd rather be watching Batman.
I think too is what, I don't want to say this all like, well, what you got to understand, but I think what
we have here
is, I think what I'll put it myself. What I had to tell myself was, because I bumped on that too. And then it was like, oh yeah, we watched these movies close. And then it was like, well, wait a minute. All of these movies came out within a year of each other. Right. And these last two movies came out the same year. So if he's getting contracted to write that music, that would be a pretty big ask to like come up with 3 completely different scores, A, and B, I mean, his whole thing was in, the band Oingo Boingo and all that kind of stuff. So he was, and again, I'm kind of referencing the soundtrack show that did the history on Danny Elfman. And I'm saying this humbly because no one's calling me to write music for a movie, but he was kind of like, if I recall, like Batman was one of his first big, like, here, it's your movie, go to town, right? And so and again, I've loved the score for Batman. The music is fantastic. So now within a year of doing that, now you've got 2 movies that you have to write music for. That would be a pretty big ask of anybody to come up with 3 completely different, you know what I'm saying? 3 completely different scores for 3 movies within 1 year. And they all kind of have the same, I mean, when you boil it down, I mean, all 3 of these movies could be sitting in the Darkman, Batman, and, Dick Tracy, man, could all be sitting in the same area of Blockbuster Video at the time, right? So he's got to write music and that's got to fit it. And they're all kind of darkened versions of, a superhero kind of genre. And the stuff that he writes, all fits in with the scene. It's not like, well, he didn't really score the scene the right way, or that's not really the feel they're going for in that movie or in that scene. And you never know. The director might have been sitting there and saying, yeah, I want that. Okay, well, I'll write you something like that. No. I want that. That's what I want in the, And
well, and Warren Beatty did go after Danny Elfman because of Batman. Like specifically, he heard that score and he's like, that that's what I want.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that came out. I mean, and he talks about it in the soundtrack show. There's 1 or 2 of these times that like they'll have hired someone. The guys just, they get a temp track or a, hey, this is what I'm looking for score. Okay, cool. And then they write him some stuff, get it recorded, put it in the movie. That's not what I wanted. I wanted that. Exactly
just copy that and just
right.
What if you just to quote the Emperor and Amadeus, what if you just removed a few notes here?
Yeah.
which notes did you have in mind, Majesty?
Yeah. And again, what am I not saying? I'm not saying, John, your opinions are wrong. But I think that's kind of the reason is why do all 3 of these films sound very similar is because they all came out within a year of its,
Issue 1, why is John's opinion about the music wrong? Wrong. Dick Tracy, really to me as a kid, Dick Tracy, I really could care less about the main character. I remember that even as a kid watching this movie, is I don't really care about Dick Tracy. Like he's kind of a boring hero is what I thought as a kid. But the rest of the characters in this movie, like how cartoonish they were as a kid, like I really thought that was awesome. Like I love this. How did they get that guy's head so flat? Or why is that guy's face so small? Or how did they, like, that doesn't even look like a real human. And you know, after the fact, you know, reading other, you know, seeing the Dick Tracy comic in the newspaper, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, they were going for that kind of, you know, grotesque caricature kind of look to some of these characters. And they really, I mean, they knocked it out of the park with those because that's amazing. But that's what I remember, the villains being more memorable. So let me ask you guys, do you have a favorite villain in this movie? Of all the villains, because we've got, I don't know, a few million in this movie. Warren Beatty tried to fit as many characters as he could into this movie because he was thinking, well, if there's no sequel, I got to throw them all in here because I love this. Do you have a favorite villain?
Breathless Mahoney.
I'm not going to ask Pat to dig any further into why that's his favorite villain.
What else do you need me to really say, guy? I mean, you know.
What'd you said Mumbles?
What'd you say, Bo?
Yeah, Big Boy did it.
Okay.
Baby did it.
Yeah. I just like Mandy Patinkin, so I probably got to go 88 Keys.
There you go.
Yeah.
Solid.
But Al Pacino is so good in this movie. Like he's so much more. To me, he even as a kid, I felt like I like this guy. Like I know he's supposed to be the crime boss, but he's kind of a more interesting guy than the other ones are.
He's certainly more fun.
Yeah. Well, and he just some of the as he is like talking to himself when they're like going through the tunnels and going through like all those back passageways towards the end of the movie. And he's just like, and I didn't kidnap you. Well, I'm kidnapping you now, but I.
Right.
No, so this is so awkward. This is so awkward. This whole thing is so awkward.
It's almost like, you know, when Robert De Niro did the and Analyze This, and they said basically just caricature your roles in mob movies. I mean, that's basically what Al Pacino had to do here. I mean, you know, because well, I say basically like it's all that easy, but that's what Al Pacino did here. I mean, it was all his acting mannerisms and everything, but just turned up to 11 for a caricature, you know, and just so entertaining.
Well, that was the interesting thing about some of these villains too, is when I started to look through the acting credits on IMDb, a lot of these guys, and I think that's why, you know, you don't necessarily hear from a lot of them, but the visuals are there, is a lot of these guys are not actors. So like a lot of them are stunt guys. When you go through and you look at the different people, like the I think it was the guy who played Littleface, the guy who played the Brow, the guy who played the Rodent. I mean, you go through some of these different characters, and their credits, when they show what movies they've been in, underneath it just says stunts in all of them. So I think a lot of these were stunt guys that they just were like, hey, you don't need to say much. We're just going to slap a whole bunch of makeup and prosthetics on you and just you stand there and look weird and look creepy.
Take a fall for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which, hey, it works.
Exactly.
So I don't want to, I mean, my initial response being that this movie is pretty and boring. I don't want that to come off as being like really harsh that I absolutely hated this movie. I just feel like this movie is a lot of looks and has great music in it, but it just, no, I don't want this to come across as being harsh because it's not that I hate the movie. Like I don't have a burning passion that I need to like mow this movie down with a Tommy gun.
Flames!
Flames on the Dick Tracy, flames on the side of my face, burning, shooting with a Tommy gun, explosions.
No reloading,
infinite ammo. So no, it's not that. Like I don't want it to come across as being that. This movie is entertaining, like, and it's visually beautiful. The music is great, whether it's Stephen Sondheim or Danny Elfman. Like there's nothing about those pieces to me where there's any negatives.
Right.
You know, except for that maybe in some ways it felt too similar to Batman for me.
Right.
The piece where I really lose this movie is just there's no substance. Like it's surface level beautiful, you know, with the music and with everything. But when it comes to the characters and when it comes to the whoever's, you know, who's supposed to be the hero of this movie, and that it's just very, it's a cardboard cutout of a character. It's a very two-dimensional, very flat, very, frankly, the hero of the movie is super boring.
Right.
So that's probably where I have the biggest problem with this movie is the one person that you would think. When I watch Batman, I'm right there with Batman. I wish I was Batman. When I watch, The Rocketeer, I wish I was the Rocketeer. I wish I was that. That's the character I want to identify with. When I'm watching Indiana Jones, except for all the times that he's just getting the tar beat out of him, that is just, that's the one person that I want to identify with.
Right.
Now, in this movie, no.
Yeah.
I have there's no sense that I'm like, hey, I really wish I could be Dick Tracy. And as a kid, I didn't identify with the Dick Tracy character either. So I think that's where this movie lost me, is that even as a child, I was like, I don't care about this guy. Like, the villains are cooler. Yeah. I know villains are always supposed to be kind of a little bit cooler than the hero, but at the same time, I was like, I don't really care about this hero at all. And that's where it kind of loses it for me. So that's why, for me, now that I've watched this again for the podcast, I don't think I'm probably ever going to go back and watch this movie again.
What you mentioned with the music, I think is right on, is kind of a microcosm of the movie. The music is, it's, again, no one is asking me to write music. And so it's fantastic, but it paints the scene. It gives you the mood, but it doesn't have that standalone thematic material that Batman does. What is the main theme from this movie? Now, what's the main theme from Batman? Yeah, right. We sing that right away.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to how it builds. It starts with that solitary oboe, and it's just that really melancholy theme, the Batman. And it just, so you have the instrument, you have the theme, then it cascades with that ding dun 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 ding dun dun dun. It's like, that just really sets you in the mood for Batman. And introduces
after you watch Heat, you got to go watch Batman again.
I actually just had that thought. But you know what I'm saying? Like, the music is in there. And if Mazuka was here, we'd be talking about that ending piece where ba 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 bum, bum ba ba ba, and then it slows down. It has that big cascade that I can't sing in key, and then it's got the chimes going, and so many different facets of the movie all have great sounds attached to them, but they're like standalone pieces of music that fit. And I think that's a microcosm of what's going on with this movie. Like, there's just cool stuff, but it doesn't reach out and grab you. It doesn't suck you in. And like the big showdown at the end, it doesn't have the same, what's going to happen that you have in Batman.
Right.
It's,
I remember that. And the only thing that was memorable to me about the showdown at the end, and I don't think I've seen this movie since probably like 1991 or 2. We probably watched it one more time after seeing it in the theater, maybe rented it at the video store. The one thing I did remember about the end was who the faceless villain was. I did remember that piece, but other than that, the rest of it was pretty forgettable. And I remember that piece, like, that was kind of a shocking surprise at the end. So it's like, well, that's really cool. And same thing, John, when we were watching it, he's like, oh, I never would have guessed that that's who that was. So there was that piece of it there, but a lot of the rest of it just seemed really disjointed. So I didn't intend on coming in tonight and, bashing Dick Tracy, but, it just, and I don't want to bash all of it because, again, it just, you can tell the work that went into it and the love that Warren Beatty and some of the other people had for this movie. Like, they really took it from the page to the screen, and visually awesome, but no heart and soul.
Yeah, it was a great movie. Just, it just didn't have as much pizzazz as some of the other ones out there.
Yeah. And
even that, like Dick Tracy, like, I think, why didn't I not go see this movie? I don't think my parents were super interested in it. I think the level of violence, like, oh man, it's just one more guy walking down the street shooting a machine gun. Mom probably would have bumped on that. As a kid, it was like, oh man, the villains look really creepy. That's weird. And, if my folks didn't have any interest in it, my dad was closer to the Dick Tracy generation. You know what I'm saying? Because that probably, when that got introduced, what was it on the radio? The different, what did Dick Tracy have a radio program? I know Green Hornet did.
Yeah, there were radio plays.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, like there just wasn't that interest. And so it was kind of like, well, what am I going to want to go watch? I want to go watch Batman, that's closer to what my thing is. And like I said, I think it's a fun movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just, take a look at all the Marvel movies out there, all 2,100 million Marvel movies.
Right.
I mean, there are some fantastic movies and there's some okay movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's any like dog movies in that whole collection, but I mean, there's some that are just kind of okay. And that's like this, Batman was really good. This one was okay. I mean, it's great. And I know how much mattered to Warren Beatty, so I don't want to knock it on him.
Right.
Poor guy's making movies. And
yeah, it's not like he would make any mistakes ever again. Oscars. All right. Well, is there anything else we feel like we want to say? Was there a scene or anything else in this movie that really kind of jumped out at you? Bo, you said you've seen this one several times. Is there a scene in particular when you think of Dick Tracy? Is there a particular scene?
It's the montage where the cops have they've got the listening device going, and they just show them busting up all the events, and then they cut to Al Pacino, and it's Tracy everywhere I go.
Yeah, for me it was the shooting the unlimited ammo Tommy gun with explosions in the background and the gratuitous violence scene.
Yeah.
Does nobody have to reload in this movie? I have been criticized by Nora. She's like, I don't understand why when you do that voice, that's your John voice. Like, why do you make fun of him? He doesn't sound anything like that. I'm like, I know. And just, it's my...
She called you out.
She did. Yeah.
Called you out.
Yeah. Like, that's not even what he sounds like. I know, but...
A little stinker.
Yeah, I know. Well, my voice for Nora is not what she sounds like either. So I just...
Fair enough.
I have a limited repertoire of voices here, so I'm just going to go with what I got. Well, are we ready for 3 questions then?
I think so. I felt like I talked a lot about. Bo, did you have anything you wanted to add about Dick Tracy there?
I liked it. It's sort of a callback to my childhood for me. So, not saying that I was guaranteed to like it, but I was kind of guaranteed to like it.
There you go. There you go.
Cool.
All right, 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
I apologize during the music. I was creating a new dance move based on Bo's favorite GIF from The Big Lebowski. So I apologize.
So that's my favorite now, huh?
That's your favorite. I've decided that's your favorite. Right. Yes.
That's right. Did that laugh?
Just checking.
Did that laugh make it in last week?
I don't think I've edited that one yet, but yes, it will.
Oh man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you really think he's gonna cut that out?
Are you kidding? I'm not gonna cut that out. Now I may have to trim it to just like a couple of minutes for time, but
yeah,
it
sort of kept going.
We lost Bo for like a good going.
Yeah.
We lost Bo for like a good 10 minutes there, I think. So,
but doesn't it feel good just to laugh?
Oh,
I mean, it just feels good. I mean, it's like
that was good stuff for sure.
I had a ball. Yeah,
that was. That was funny.
I see what you did there.
That was funny. That's still funny. Oh man.
All right. Question number 1. Favorite newspaper comic strip?
Oh gosh, I have so many.
Enlighten us.
Where do I start? I don't want to step on anybody's, but when I first, the first Family Circle was the first thing that came to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Loved that, but then I really thought about it a little longer, and then I remembered growing up, and my dad was a big Calvin and Hobbes guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a lot of time with Calvin and Hobbes, but then I remember what my favorite one was back then I loved BC, the cavemen, for some reason. It's one of those things, I can't even tell you why. Like, I even looked up a couple of old strips to see if I could get that inspiration back and point to something, but something about that has always stuck in my head. So I'm going to have to say BC.
Yeah.
Cool.
Those are good. Pat, what have you got?
Hagar the Horrible.
Nice.
Yeah. And that would be the one. And it's funny, I kind of forgot about him. I had to go on the Google and type in, and it was like, oh yeah, I remember Calvin and Hobbes. Oh yeah, I remember that. Doonesbury. Okay, yeah, I remember all the, It's like, you know what? I think I always liked reading Hagar the Horrible. That always cracked me up. So, yeah, that would be mine.
Nice. I remember as a kid, I was always a fan of the Spider-Man comic strip that they would have in the Sun. Probably more than just a Sunday paper, but Spider-Man was always a favorite one. In more recent years, I think one of my favorites, I'm going to list one favorite that nobody is going to know about. I used to work for the Daily Illini newspaper when I was a student at the University of Illinois, and we had a comic strip called Blue Rice, and it was hilarious. It was my favorite comic strip. I'd read it every single time. Didn't know the guy well, but I worked at the newspaper the same time that the guy who was drawing that was doing it. I think it ran from 99 to 2002. So it was around about the same time that I was in school there. Most of the story would take place like behind one of the bars. The characters were sitting at the bar drinking something. They would just be talking. It was Hale the Snail and Gordon the Gnome. And they would just comment on all kinds of stuff. And then usually I think Buzz was the drunk duck that would come in every once in a while. and pontificate about something. But so that was probably one of my favorites. Probably in more recent years, I would say I always liked Get Fuzzy. That one with the dog and the cat. That was always a good one. One that is not two of them though. You know what? Actually, I think I'm going to have a little bit of trouble with this because two of the kind of comic strip style comics that I like that I don't think have ever actually been in a newspaper were JL8. It's the Justice League characters, but they're all 8 years old. Oh, and then it was a web comic. And I actually saw the guy and I actually had him do a commission for me at one of the last comic shows we were at. He did a Rocketeer for me in the same style that he did his JL8 comic.
Cool.
It's really, really nice. So there's that one. I really like that one when I found that one. But the other one that it makes me laugh so much every time I read it is Chief O'Brien at Work.
Yeah.
I like that one.
That's good.
It makes me so happy.
It
ticks
cool.
all the nerd boxes.
Yes.
Yeah. In an actual newspaper comic strip, I would say probably Get Fuzzy would be one of my favorite ones. In recent years, but
I thought of another one while we were all talking.
Yeah.
Did anyone ever read Wizard of Id?
A little bit here and there, yeah.
I remember hearing about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was fun too. It was sort of in the same vein as BC, just different.
Yeah. Sharon's favorite one lately has been Brewster Rocket. I don't know if you guys read those or not. That's good. He's it's Brewster, and I think Pam is also one of the crew members on the ship with him. It's kind of like a space, almost like a Star Trek kind of deal. And some of the ones she's cut out a few of them for me that she'll keep and she'll send them to me so I can put them up somewhere at work. And one of them was because I love the movie Alien, and one of them was Brewster is talking to I think the ship's doctor, and he's asking him something like, so wait, are eggs good or bad for you? Like, are eggs bad for you? And you show a picture of the egg hatching and the little face hugger running after somebody, and the doctor's just like, yeah, sometimes.
That's
like,
funny.
That's good stuff. We did have from the social medias, we had at Tristan Martin on Twitter said Garfield was his favorite. Okay. So Garfield classic. Nora loves that. Like, she's checked out every collection she can find from the library that has all the Garfield comics in it. So she's a huge Garfield fan. Cool. Jason Colvin and I think I think Doug is maybe part of the extended Oklahoma contingent. Doug Huggin on Facebook had mentioned Calvin and Hobbes. He was kind of replying to Jason Colvin's post on Facebook. Right. Jason said, For me, I love comic strips. I even considered drawing one at one time, but this one isn't even close. Calvin and Hobbes by Bill Watterson is the greatest comic strip of all time, and it's not even close. He said, absolute genius. I'll stop now before I really geek out.
Right.
Jason, you can geek out anytime you want. You feel free to call the love line and feel free to geek out about Calvin and Hobbes, and we'd love to hear more about it. So this is never a place where anybody should stop geeking out.
No, gotta amp that up.
True.
So, yeah. All right, question number 2. This movie, and I've mentioned it several times during this show, this movie was pretty well known for its fast food movie promotion. And to me, at least I remember kind of as a kid, this being one of the first times that I really remembered there being such a huge game that was going on. Like you could win, it was like $40 million or something, like the Dick Tracy Crime Stoppers. And, that was one of the first, even before, I don't recall exactly when McDonald's started the whole Monopoly thing and that kind of stuff. But I vividly remember the scratch-off cards you would get as part of the Dick Tracy game for this one. What is your favorite fast food movie promotion tie-in?
I'm going to jump in and just say, I don't think I have much. I can't remember. I was going onto the Google and being like, okay, and typing that search in and coming up with stuff that it was like, I don't remember this. I don't remember this. I remember that, but I also remember that as much as this, and I don't really remember that.
Did you ever get any of the glasses from like Burger King, McDonald's, any of those places?
No, we never collected any of those.
No? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. This one flew by.
Well,
this one's,
Pat, I'm going to pull a green arrow and I'm going to say you have failed this podcast.
I know. I mean, the closest thing I can sort of remember is that Pepperidge Farm used to have these little cookies that were like as hard as crackers, but they were shaped and tasted and formed like cookies of Star Wars stuff from back in the early 80s.
Oh, okay.
And so you'd open up the, as opposed to like, it would be goldfish cracker size cookies. And there was a Luke Skywalker and a Princess Leia and a Darth Vader, Han Solo, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll throw that out there, but that's not quite fast food. And yeah, I just don't remember.
For me, I'm trying to think of like what favorite would be. I mean, I remember so many of these because at different times I would always, really pester my parents and like, can we get the Return of the Jedi glasses from, McDonald's or wherever they were? And, anytime there was some kind of a promotional deal, like promotional cups or something like that, like I was all over. Like, can I get the Dream Team cup? I think it was like in 92 or one of those years? It was like they came out with the Dream Team cups that you could get at one of the restaurants, for the basketball, the Olympic basketball team. And we still have like the kids, if I'm fixing them breakfast and I want to give them just like, some orange juice in a little glass or something, we've still got the Batman and Robin glasses from Batman Forever that we got. I think those are probably McDonald's glasses. But I remember, I like I've said several times in this episode, I vividly remember the Dick Tracy scratch off game. And I remember that being the first time that, I was, at a very young age, I'm sure they were trying to get me hooked on getting prepped for like lottery tickets or things like that. I don't buy a lot of lottery tickets now, but I feel like that was like the first time, if you want your gateway drug into lottery tickets, you do the McDonald's Dick Tracy scratch off game.
There it is.
But you get a burger with it, so you win either way.
Yeah.
So, Bo, did you have any in particular? Did you have any that you collected at any point?
We had some of the glasses. I remember the Batman Forever glasses for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We had a bunch of the
we used to have. I think we used to have all of the Batman Forever glasses, and then when everybody like went off to college, like Brian took some, and Sarah took some, and I took some, and I think it just ended up getting divided up. I think we had all of them at some point.
I do remember some that were really strange over the years. Do you remember the Spider when Venom came out, and they brought the Dark Whopper back?
Is that the one? Yeah. Was that the one they had done it was a Dark Side Whopper with the black bun?
Yep.
Yeah. Because they did that for Star Wars. Didn't they do that for Revenge of the Sith?
Maybe it was Revenge of the Sith. I couldn't remember which one. I just remember it for Spider-Man and Venom because they had like a 2-pack. You get 2 for $5 or whatever, and one was Spider-Man and one was Venom.
Yeah.
And then they did a really quirky Hobbit. Do you remember the Hobbit breakfast menu at Denny's?
Second breakfast?
Exactly.
I don't. This is for the Hobbit. That's like after Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it was the Hobbit. I can't remember which. Yeah, I guess it was the Hobbit. So.
And this came out when we were all adults.
So that was the first bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Don't ask me how I remembered this, but I had to look it up to prove that I wasn't insane.
Okay.
They do a Hobbit thing, and it was just Denny's. They designed a menu around, build your own Hobbit slam. I mean, you know how Denny's was. It was just pancakes, but
That's
they
funny.
might have found some things that like somewhat referenced the movie, but it was Denny's. It wasn't they Hobbit themed a menu because they could.
Mm-hmm.
And in looking some of that stuff up, I found some weird stuff people did.
Mm-hmm.
The Hunger Games did a Catching Fire tie-in with a hot Chipotle chicken sub at Subway.
Yes, they did. I remember that. Yeah.
Some of the stuff I stumbled upon, I'm like, you must be kidding, but they weren't, John.
Yeah.
They weren't.
Nope, they did it.
Yeah.
The Flintstones, Flintstones glasses. We had a couple of those too. Just looking through this other list that I found because I had to verify the Hobbit thing. I'm like, God, it rings a bell, but if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. But I have to admit, I feel like there were more. Like, I wrote down a few more that weren't necessarily fast food tie-ins that I remember really well.
Yeah.
Just cross-promotional stuff. Do you remember the Indiana Jones Diet Coke commercial?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was is at the beginning of, because we still have that. I think down in the basement somewhere. We had the VHS of Last Crusade, and it was on at the beginning of the,
Yep, that's the one. And that's why I remember it, because you put the tape in and you'd watch the commercial. It wasn't that
right.
You didn't want to remember that, but it was just there.
Well, see, that's like my copy growing up. My copy of Raiders was always missing the first 3 minutes because it was probably recorded off of like HBO or off of TV somewhere. Sure. Yeah. So our copy of Raiders of the Lost Ark, I had never seen. I didn't realize until I took John to go see it in the theater when it was back out for the whatever anniversary a few years ago. I realized I had never seen the first 3 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
I was like, that's insane. I have watched this movie how many times my entire life, but it's off of the exact same VHS copy we always had growing up. So that movie, I never saw the first 3 minutes. When I pictured Last Crusade, I picture that Diet Coke as like the beginning of the movie. Like I think of that Diet Coke commercial as the beginning of the Last Crusade. Awesome. Like kind of like how when you have like when you have The Office has like a cold open to the like an episode of The Office. I'm like, that's kind of like, that's just what, or the James Bond. It's like, this is what comes before the credits in Last Crusade. It's like you have the Coke commercial and then it's the opening credits.
That's the way it works.
I feel like, I was looking at, there's a couple of websites that have like weird fast food movie tie-ins. And I don't even know what, this one doesn't go into detail, but it's like Sbarro did a Godfather tie-in.
Yeah, I saw that. I was looking online. I saw some of that stuff, and it's just, oh no.
There was the I forget which. I was seeing this on here, but I forget which restaurant it was. The Walking Dead burger made to taste like human flesh.
Oh, that's just really appealing.
Like, why would you? Like, who is sitting in this marketing meeting and they're like, "Hey guys, let me just." Let's spitball some ideas here. Let's make some ideas here. What is it? I'm actually reading this story on here. The Walking Dead's 5th season is starting soon, and to celebrate, this has been a while ago, Fox has teamed up with 2 London food creatives to craft a burger that is meant to depict the taste of actual human flesh without being made of human flesh. That's disgusting.
Yeah, like I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah.
Can I have some carrots?
They even have like this entire graphic that shows what is the taste of human flesh? And it like goes into details like, what are the flavors? But like, that just
why? What? Okay.
What is wrong with people?
Just stop, guys. Just stop. Well, I was just saying, I was going to come up with Jurassic Park ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about this with students at summer music camp. Mm-hmm. And basically Jurassic Park ice cream is like just human shaped, your popsicle stick.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is like this, like it's humans like ducking and putting their hands up or screaming, no, like all that, not, and then the thing is when you bite into it, it's got like the, what's the stuff in like crackle candy bar, like the Rice Krispie stuff that it crunches?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they're filled with red syrup, right?
Yeah.
So that when you bite like the arm, it crunches and then the red syrup comes out. See, you're the dinosaur.
Gotcha.
In Jurassic Park ice cream. But you see, that's made with like ice cream and strawberry syrup and Rice Krispies, not like we're going to make this taste like flesh. That's disturbing.
Yeah, that's a choice I wouldn't make. I'm just, I gotta go out. I gotta say.
Do you remember? This is not a restaurant one, but it is super gross. Do you remember was it the Push Pop? It was the Star Wars episode 1 Push Pop. Does anybody remember this one?
Vaguely. I don't remember the gag though.
Yeah. Basically, the top of the Push Pop is Jar Jar's head, and when you push the Push Pop out, it's his tongue. Because that's not a bad idea at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some questionable choices were made around that character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is the decision. This is the choice you decided to go with today.
You just decided to double down and just go for the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Every decision around Jar Jar Binks
and
was
scar
wrong.
all children for life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, let's see. For Jason Colvin was one of the people that responded, and he put up a whole bunch of pictures on Facebook. The Star Wars glasses, the USA Dream Team cups, Batman Returns cups, the Great Muppet Caper glasses that they had. Yeah, so that was he said he remembered a lot of those too, and having kind of a regular rotation. We used to, before we kind of cycled through a whole bunch of those, I used to keep any kind of cups that I would get from, going to the movie theater, and they'd have like the promotional cups for whatever movie coming out, and have a really nice metal popcorn tin that I got from going to see Rogue One, that we just kind of used to keep stuff in now. Yeah.
Either one of my brother or I have that.
That one
too?
too?
You know what? I think we gave it to my mom.
Okay.
That's what it is.
I also still have somewhere. I think I still have the episode 1 cup that was the giant, the like top half. Unfortunately, I didn't realize at the time that was a spoiler alert. It's the top half of Darth Maul's body, and this giant straw goes through Darth Maul's back, and that was you put him. It was the top of the cup, and his arms can move.
Yeah,
so it was always like this weird, huge, unwieldy cup. Yeah,
Kung Fu action grip and
with Kung Fu grip while you're drinking. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, question number 3: what is your favorite Stephen Sondheim song? And I'm going to fully admit, Stephen Sondheim, that's not my area of expertise. It's not my forte. So I'm just going to go with the weird answer, and I'm going to say "Send in the Clowns."
There you go. Definitely on the list.
To me, it's probably the ironic choice, because I looked at the other ones and I was like, I don't know that I really have enough. I liked the songs that he had written for this movie. I know I've probably heard some other, and I listened to a few of them. I was like, yeah, I just don't know. And the ironic choice for me is all of the probably weird or creepy ways that I have quoted "Send in the Clowns" at different times during my life. And so I'm just going to go with that one.
Last week.
I did try to make my own version of it for Star Wars and have it be "Send in the Clones," but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, that was it's a beautiful song. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is. But no, I'm gonna +1 you on that. I mean, it's kind of like I could dig through the internet and try and find more songs and then try and figure out which one. But it's like that's the one I know, and we need Bazooka here to kind of fill in our information gaps. So
Jeff, if you want to call in at some point and let us know favorite Sondheim song,
That'd be awesome.
We'll throw that up there on the voicemail.
Yeah. All right, Bo, what do you have?
So Everybody Ought to Have a Maid from A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
Okay.
Which is just a hysterical song.
Yeah.
In a hysterical musical. And then from Into the Woods, Children Will Listen.
Oh,
okay.
Cool.
It's a pretty good tune, too.
Cool.
Yeah, I got to go back to, it's been a while since I've heard The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. I got to go back and listen to that one again.
Everybody Ought to Have a Maid is a good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will go check that out. Very nice, very nice. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for Dick Tracy for us here. So thank you, Bo, and thank you, Pat, for being here.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks, John.
And as usual, our next upcoming episodes, we've got our Time and Space month. So we finished out our crime month. We've got Time and Space coming up next. Back to the Future Part 3, Star Trek, The Next Generation, The Best of Both Worlds, Fire. Sorry, I thought I'd pause for like a week and then you can come back. No, actually, it was more than a week. Was that over the summer?
That was over a summer.
Wasn't it
yeah.
from like May to September or June to something like that? The longest pause ever after the word fire. Then Spaced Invaders comes after that one. Mo Better Blues, Jaws, the 45th anniversary. We're going to throw that one in there somewhere as well. And then we get into our kids month, and that is going to be Kindergarten Cop, Home Alone, DuckTales the movie, Treasure of the Lost Lamp, and Problem Child. Actually, the kids were looking at this list the other day. They're like, "What's Problem Child?" And I said, "Well, basically the title kind of says it all." Like, well, but what does it mean? I was like, "Well, it's basically a mischievous kid that causes problems." Oh, you mean like my brother? Okay, well, maybe. I'm not going to respond to that right now, but we'll watch the movie and you can decide for yourself.
Nice.
And then the funny thing is, I think he walked through the room and he's looking at the list over my shoulder and he's like, "What's Problem Child?" I was like, "I don't know. It's like how can I put this before you watch the movie? It's like a kid that causes problems." "Oh, like me?" Like, "Oh, okay. Well then."
Hey, are we all okay with this? Yeah. Oh, all right. Okay. Just checking.
I just want to confirm that apparently your sister was right.
Tell your sister you were right.
Glad we're all on the same page here. If you have not already, visit our website, 30podcast.com. Check us out on any of the social medias at 30podcast. If you want to call into our voicemail line, it's 872-356-6843 or 872-35-MOVIE. At some point, we will get Pat on there as the recorded voice asking you what movie you'd like to comment on in movie phone style, because I think that would just be great.
Oh, yeah.
Please type the number of the first letter of the movie you'd like to talk about.
Why don't you just tell me that?
Why don't you just tell me? Yes. Or we'll just, you know what? Actually, I'm going to put in your, maybe I'll just put in your cell phone number and people can just call you.
Just call me up, man.
Just randomly, I mean, hey, if we don't go back to school in the fall, what are you going to be doing?
What else do I got nothing.
Right. So, I mean, I think you answer some phone calls.
That's it. Answer the phones.
Just talk to some folks. I think it'd be fun.
Back to the phones.
There we go.
Back to the phones. Back to the phones.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Go check out our website, check out all the other stuff. We should have up there by now what you can vote for if you want to vote for our 1991 movies. We get a little bit, I get a little bit ahead of things and get a little antsy for the next year. So already got that stuff put up there. If you want to check us out on Letterboxd, I've actually created a Letterboxd list with all of the movies that are our potential 1991 movies. So if you're not sure, if you have not heard of that movie before and you want to get a little bit more information, go check out that list on Letterboxd and you can click through and get a little bit more information on the movies to make sure that your vote is more informed, because we're all for informed voting around here. But that's going to do it for us. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me here. We will see you all back here next time. So be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies, and we will see you back here next time for Back to the Future Part 3.